All right, so welcome everyone to our weekly wellness webinar, and great to have you all here. Excited today to welcome back, I think our most popular guest right now, who is now on her third return, Swapna Vaidya, and she is a psychiatrist, and she is going to introduce herself and give a little bit more on her background. But today we are going to be talking about this idea around community, what that means right now during this pandemic, and what we can do to use community to support us, and how that might look as things start to transition, as things are opening up and we're looking at what this new beginning is going to be. All right, Swapna, hello.
Hi, wow, Stacey, that was quite an introduction. I'm honored, that you guys keep inviting me because I feel like I learned so much from each of you. And I have a confession. I have signed up for your webinars, all of your webinars. I have been listening and learning so much. So I really appreciate this website and this initiative that, Jill has created. It's such a great support system for women. So, very good question, Stacey, as we're talking about the community and the essence of it. As we are approaching more or less the 6th week or the 7th week of this pandemic, I mean, I've lost count, to be honest with you.
Right, it's easy to do.
Right? I mean, it's becoming so diverse, and it's becoming such a challenging issue as to how do we now pivot and what is this new normal to think about. And then as I communicate with my other physician colleagues, or I communicate with friends who are not on the front lines, for each of them, it's a different new normal and it's a different experience. So when I talk about what we should do, I think I would like to tailor it to individual approaches or family based approaches rather than one size fits all.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of physicians who've been traumatized by this. They see the worst of the worst, and it is true, and we don't know how this virus is still acting and ravaging the human body. And I feel like my frontline physician folks, they are suffering from some amount of acute stress disorder and PTSD. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
volunteer for a line, which is
Mm-hmm.
a support line. And I feel privileged and honored that I can at least lend my support in that direction. But hearing the stories are pretty daunting. But on the
Yeah.
other hand, then we have different states which have seen different levels of cases. And now the question of economy, opening that up, as well as going back to some modality of routine is coming up. And, when you see these different Facebook sites or support systems, there are all these diversifying views. And I often find that people tend to judge, not necessarily consciously, but in an unconscious way, because we are trying to portray what is it exactly that we would want to do.
Mm.
But what I tried to say before is that one size won't fit all.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's so important to understand and have a talk with your family, your unit members, and see, hey, where are we with our comfort level? What do we like to do? Do we like to socially distant walk, or do you think that I can have a play date, and kind of like with some families that I can trust, right?
Yeah.
And again, one of the women on Facebook, she said something to the effect of, don't judge me, I have to send my kids to the daycare and whatnot. And I just had to tell her, there are no judgments here. You know what? There are difficult choices.
Mm-hmm.
These are difficult choices. And
Yeah.
I think all we can do is to be compassionate towards each other, not beat each other down. Because what might be the situation for one family might not be the same for others. Some families might have caregivers, they may be lucky to have nannies. Some just don't have that option.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do we do, and how do we keep ourselves safe with whatever knowledge that we have, and follow the CDC guidelines of masking and hand washing and keeping ourselves socially distant as much as possible? It's so important.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you illustrate that there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of layers, and each person is experiencing their own experience, their own pandemic, and everyone can be having a different experience around that. Swapna, when we think about community, generally speaking, related to mental health, well, I guess first the question is, what is community? So we can get everyone kind of on the same page with that from your perspective. And then the follow-up is, what role does that play in mental health?
Both great questions and such an important, timely questions. For me, community is basic humanity.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally the fact that we are all human beings. We are going through this unique experience, unprecedented experience, and we are all in sort of these uncharted waters.
Hmm.
Nobody is really knowing what to do, but we are chaotic, we are anxious, we are getting restless, we are getting
Hmm.
listless. What we could do is to reach out to each other, the human
Hmm.
chain. That's the most important chain here. I mean, for the
Yeah.
sake of the virus, we should socially distance, but
Yeah.
right? But then, on the other hand, paradoxically, for emotional connection, it's so important. And in a way, we are blessed. Like we do have technology, we have platforms that we
Hmm.
virtually connect. It might not be the same, and I do agree that it's, you miss the human touch, you miss the seeing that person in front of you. But there are some alternatives that you can reach out to, and community is exactly that. You define your community, and
Hmm.
you find those people and make them your tribe.
Yeah.
Community is tribe, and what does tribe do? Support you.
Yeah, that support, and that support is key, especially during uncertain times. People, we need that support and balance. And what role, I mean, you touched a little bit on this, but from your perspective and your training and background, how does community connect to supporting mental health? It provides support, but what is happening there in that connection?
So, I'll tell you from a part of like where I practice. I mean, I practice in a nonprofit hospital. I'm a medical director there. And what I see there is that we actually are very blessed that we work within public health. The King
Mhm.
County Public Health Initiative has been extremely helpful
Yeah.
and extremely, forthcoming with the resources that they have provided for our patients, whether it is shelters for, some of our less fortunate
Mhm.
patients who don't have a home to shelter in or a home to isolate or quarantine in. They have all teamed up to outreach, so there are teams of outreach, which are homeless outreach teams, which actually go to patients' places and see if they have enough medications, they have enough food. And so I think that I have really found through this experience just such caring communities out there.
Yeah.
When it comes to outpatient mental health treatment, we actively corroborate and collaborate with them to make sure that our patients who have suffered a very, a crisis within our inpatient systems are now getting the proper continuity of care.
Mhm.
So that is community. We want
Yeah.
to make sure they have enough medications, they have enough resources, they have enough, a place to kind of quarantine if they need to or to isolate. Their
Mhm.
needs are met. And it's so important to even ask this question: what is it that I can do?
Yeah.
What is it that you need? Because the
Mhm.
need that you may have, Stacey, is so much more different from the need of somebody who's in acute crisis.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
listening, yeah, as a community, having an empathic listening point of view and providing the supports as much as you can, partnering with all these great resources and initiatives. Our hospital multi-care health system has a lot of initiatives and a lot of resources. As I said, that they have partnered with the public health and have helped tremendously within this crisis system.
Yeah, no, that's a good point too. That again, going back to those layers and community providing that support and looking at how it is a collective effort. There isn't one single healthcare provider probably in your system that could go out and do all of this. It's a collective effort to support greater people and really for that greater good, and bringing people together is really powerful and can also help, that giving effort as a community can help other individuals feel like they're doing something, they're acting, and they're serving in a way that can support their own mental health. Perhaps it's a two-way street.
You actually touched upon some very crucial points. So it's about your defense mechanisms.
Hmm.
What you talked about was altruism.
Mm.
I think that's such a mature defense mechanism, that how can you help your community during
Hmm.
these very trying times? If you channel your anxiety or you channel the way you're coping towards such a way that can also help your fellow human beings,
Hmm.
that's such a beautiful thing that happened even in this crisis.
Yeah, some of the goods, the silver linings, and focusing on what you can control versus when it's so easy to look at things that are out of your control. Channeling that energy to the one thing or two, three things that you can do within your control is really powerful.
It is. And, it doesn't have to be such of a huge initiative, or you don't have to overburden yourself.
Hmm.
Find a cause or find something that you connect with. You
Yeah.
know, that could be the way you share. Even if you share your experiences, that's a way of sharing with your community.
Excellent. Yeah, and we had, I don't know if you saw, but on our Tuesday webinar, we actually featured a group of women who had come together to be able to support community with food. And then in turn, we're supporting restaurants, and it's snowballing. People are catching on and they want to give and they want to do something. So doing little things like that, it doesn't have to be that big project. It could certainly even be something small, but there is that act of kindness, that act of doing something for just the fact that it's the right thing to do, really has some power right now in what we're seeing and what we're experiencing.
Yeah, I was actually inspired. I did listen to that talk, and I was
Yeah.
very inspired by what these women had achieved. And how that sort of like brought these women together for this common initiative and common good. And
Hmm.
how that kind of like, translated into then a cascading effect of, becoming more and more of it, because kindness pays off, right? You can kind of like see that and embrace that very positive and caring side of humanity that I think this pandemic has definitely showed us.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to look on the positive side of things. Well, related to that, and you've touched on a little bit this as well, but I want to bring it because we are, as Gennev looks to support women, especially during menopause. But how does community during this time, why is it important? And why is it especially important for women?
And again, I think we are sort of going to say the same old thing. It's the gender issue, it's all of that. But honestly, I think they did some study, which was a very small study that they found out. They surveyed a few women during this pandemic and found out how many hours they were putting in at work. And work was everything, right? Work didn't have to be just that they were working from home, but also the other things, which could include taking care of your kids, to getting
Hmm.
their homeworks done, and there was a significant difference in the amount of time their husbands put in and the women put in. Significant. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, the question became, why is that? Right?
Mhm.
I mean, so yes, there is this traditional sort of ingrained way of how women have been culturally brought up or thought that we are the nurturers, we are the caregivers. But this is not the normal, natural time. These are unprecedented times. I
Right.
think if women continue to sort of say that, okay, I'm going to take as much as I can, they may risk becoming overstressed and overburdened.
Hmm.
So I feel very important for men and women, both. And I'm not going to just sort of like really actually make it about gender. I'm just going to make it about partnership.
Hmm.
Whoever is in your household right now, just partner and divide the chores, or say, okay, listen, if I do the dishes, can you do this, or anything like that, or try to do something for each other.
Hmm.
Don't feel you're the one carrying the brunt of this family.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And as I've been talking with my clients this week, especially as you said, the beginning, we're week 7, 6, we're not really sure, but it's been going on long enough that we can't really remember when it started. And as women just do, they go, they get the job done. If they're working, they're still working, they're taking care of their kids, their family, whatever their responsibilities are. And it's easy to just go, go, go until all of a sudden something's not right or something's not feeling good. And I would say I've seen that in a lot of clients over the past couple of weeks where they're realizing something's up, and some of
Yeah.
them have realized they're tired, they're more fatigued. There's not as many boundaries, so there's not even the time in your car
Mhm.
from work to home to decompress. You leave your office and walk into the kitchen and start making dinner. So these things that we take for granted of being able to take a breath, being able to take a step back, isn't there as much. Or what example, I had a client this week realize she hadn't taken a vacation. They couldn't go on spring break. And that was usually a time that they would rejuvenate. And then she realized I just kept working.
Yeah.
And now I haven't had a vacation. I haven't had any days off. It feels weird to take a day off and stay home, right?
What is a day off, right?
Yeah.
Every day seems like a day off. It's like
Yeah.
one of my patients told me it's like the Groundhog Day, right? You wake up, it's the same day, you live it. Now you don't know which month you're in. I mean, oh
Mhm.
my God, is it almost the end of May? So it's just, we all are sort of experiencing this uncharted way of time and space. The whole concept of it has changed. We don't know
Yeah.
where we are right now. Where are we going? Where are we coming from? And
Yes.
in the midst, women really need to know that the fact is that they will and should ask for help.
Hmm.
Because And I feel like the husbands are stepping up, or the partners are stepping up, or their friends are stepping up, because everybody has recognized that we really don't know how long this is going to happen. Is
Yeah,
the second wave coming? Are the states opening too soon? Those other questions are still there. And again, those are the uncertainties that we have to now make it as if they are a part of our existence.
exactly. Yeah. And that's you talked about the partnership, and certainly a household is a community, whether it's 2 people, 6 people, whatever, whoever is in the household. What about other aspects of community? For women, do you see what other areas do you see might be beneficial for women to bring community to support them right now?
I mean, one of them is this platform, Jenny. I
Mhm.
honestly feel like, I mean, I'm not biased. I'm really finding out and, listening to the webinars. I'm telling you that there was so much that I learned. So
Mhm.
I feel like connecting to something that really gives you the sense of identity.
Mhm.
So, but make it something positive, right? Like for me, I've connected with a lot of my school friends, you know,
Okay.
women that I've known since I was 5 years old. I'm not going to tell you my age, but and we are literally talking about some things that we've done when we were 10 or 11, and
Yeah.
memoirs that are coming out of it that are, I mean, they're mind blowing, they're hilarious. And
Yeah.
identifying and connecting to that depth of who we were,
Mhm.
that is a community. It could be your colleagues at work. I think one of my friends was saying they have a happy hour, sort of like a virtual happy hour, and
Mhm.
some virtual games. It's kind of like an interesting game they play. It's a word game, and they divide teams, and the teams are virtual, and it all sounded very complicated. Needless to say, she works in Amazon.
Yeah.
You teach me. I'm like, well, maybe one day we will get there. So this is how the tech companies are reaching out and doing out things. And then it could be your family
Mhm.
group, right, that you have probably not been in touch with for many times, your cousin reunion. So many simple ways of doing it.
Mhm.
For me, I'm also very much involved on the Facebook physician group, Physician Moms.
Mhm.
And I honestly get so much information and support from these women who are going through the same thing that I'm going through, and balancing their careers and balancing this new normal. So whichever way you find yourself connecting in a positive way,
Mhm.
that's the key thing. Don't get involved in some negative cycles there. Don't get in these kind of like Twitter wars or Facebook wars. That's not the point of this.
Yeah.
Right? We have social media. Let's utilize it to nurture our souls, not to put
Mhm.
each other down.
That's such a good point. And I like how you covered a lot of different avenues for community. So there's community through social media. That's definitely an option. And if you can find a Facebook group that you have common interests, perhaps it's a mix of people you know and people you don't know. So there's that balance. A community like Gennev, I love that example. We are a community and we're welcoming all women in. And we want to be able to provide that support and that collective, especially with menopause as our focus. This menopause, adding menopause to a pandemic, I've been telling clients that they're going to get an award. If you went through menopause, if you're going through menopause during this pandemic, you deserve an award because there's just like some type of t-shirt that said I'm in menopause in a pandemic, or I went through menopause in a pandemic. Because it adds another layer to things, but being able to know you're not alone, what you're going through is a normal process, and that is part of the process, but you can ask for help. And again, giving that permission, and help might just be a listening ear. Help might be, what are some resources that I can use right now? So that's a great point. I love that. I am biased, but with you as well, I'm 100% fan of Gennev and what they're doing. I wouldn't work for a company if I didn't believe in it. So definitely a shout out to Gennev right there.
I'm definitely there. And like as a woman myself going through changes, I have to say that it has helped me tremendously to understand what resources there are.
Mm-hmm.
What I could do, what could fit me, my sort of like lifestyle. And I especially love the Michelle Obama
Mm-hmm.
because I love Michelle Obama.
Yes, yes.
So, I just love that there was this way of kind of connecting and this way of telling me or anyone else who's going through this, in this pandemic that I am not able to go towards my regular resources. I'm not able to go and have my, oh, let's have a girls' night or anything like that. Wherein we used to take those things for granted. Remember? I mean, remember the time like, oh yeah,
Yep.
today's girls' night out. No, that's not happening for now. But it can happen virtually,
Virtually, yes.
or it can happen in a way that through communities such as these. It
Hmm.
can happen through blogs. It can happen through exchange of ideas and thoughts.
Hmm.
And I think through this, I mean, again, I know that these are challenging times, but I mean, I don't know, maybe I am an optimist, which is how I kind of I think I am one, but I
Yes.
want to be a realist a bit. But I really want to say that I think through this, there are opportunities to
Hmm.
rediscover yourself, to reinvent yourself and to
Yeah.
pivot yourself and see what else is out there. What else
Yes.
about yourself that you haven't discovered?
Hmm.
Time to kind of sit and think and pause and see, what is.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, that's a great point, too, of just how can you use this time to your advantage? This is a time that we've never had before, and and I don't think many people are going to want it to repeat. Whether it does in different renditions, time will tell. Um, but how can you use it to your advantage? And that's another conversation I've been having, and maybe not the new normal. Sometimes thinking about, we don't know what normal is anymore. So I've been using the concept of a new beginning. This is your opportunity to start something new and to take with you from this time what you want to take with it and what do you want to leave behind, and start thinking that through. And what I hear you're saying
I like
too,
that. I really
it,
like what you said, Stacey.
thank you. There's a, there's something about the normal thing that I'm like, I don't know how to define normal anymore. So let's think of a new word. Um, but what I hear you're saying too is just the part of what can support us in this new beginning is finding ways that we aren't remaining isolated. Isolation may not serve us long term. And while we have to do this physical isolation, how can we maintain socially connected, and the community, whether it be family, friends, or an online platform of colleagues or people you don't even know, has benefits to helping to start that new beginning.
Absolutely. I think that we can just really cannot I mean, we have to sort of understand how community is the only thing that's going to get us through this.
Hmm.
Because this is a shared experience,
Yeah.
and one thing that can also help us out, as we feel this anxiety, or we feel like, oh, we're getting depressed, or we're getting this, instead of putting these labels, I really feel because that it's important to understand what the context of these labels are.
Hmm.
You're not alone. So outreach and ask your friend, hey, how are you doing? Hey, what's happening with your kid? I mean, my kid doesn't seem to listen to me at all. Like, mommy fail, mommy fail. So, I mean, and then I forgive myself and I say, hey, look, he had a time. He's having a stressful time.
Hmm.
And, I know screen time is a bit much more in my household than I used to allow, but there are ways that he's coping too. I mean, what can I offer in that situation? And then we exchange ideas. And then somebody will say, hey, listen, have you thought about downloading this particular app? My kid seems to like it.
Hmm.
And, that's the idea right there. So we are learning from each other on so many levels.
Yeah.
And perhaps that helps my kid, but most of the time it doesn't, Karate. But
Yeah.
anyway, I try my very hardest best to kind of get him interested and invested in different things.
Hmm.
So, but that's the community. This is what I'm talking about. A community that builds you up, a community that enhances you, that nurtures your soul, that makes you feel warm and fuzzy.
Hmm.
You know, that is what you want to actually strive towards.
Yes, exactly. That, I like how you use that term nurturing. Right now, I think we can all use a little nurturing, because there's a drain on us, and whether we realize it or not, what I notice, and myself included, it's like you're just going along doing things, and thankful for to be healthy during this time. So we think we see all this sickness, and if we're healthy, we think we should be okay. And when the reality is, like you mentioned, everybody's situation is different, and there may be times where I may be okay, I'm not in a hospital, but there are other areas where, okay, I could use a little nurturing because it hasn't happened.
I mean, and speaking of communities, so I think I was telling you about, so I have a medical school friends group
Hmm.
on WhatsApp, and one of my medical school friends' daughter, I mean, I think she's wise beyond her years. Her name is Tanvi Bijur. She actually writes a blog, and I told her I'm going to use this, but she writes and she talks about this concept. It's a Danish concept. It's from Denmark. It's called Huga,
Mm,
Hygge, but it's pronounced Huga. And I was like, what does Huga even mean? What is that? And she says, it's a mindset. It's a
mm,
mindset that makes you feel connected to what you're going through. And it could be drinking a nice chocolate like that. I like a hot chocolate, she said, or just being still in my mind, or maybe
mm,
painting, maybe not even doing anything, but that's Huga. So try to find what is your inner Huga, you know,
mm.
and doesn't have to be a comparative anything. It just has to resonate with you.
Yeah.
She said, and no wonder she's like, well, look, people in Denmark, I mean, they go through these very harsh winters. And
Hmm.
I think the happiness quotient or the index is not that bad there. So I am telling you, it's funny that my friend is also a psychiatrist. And I told her, your daughter is completely following in your footsteps. So,
Yes.
yeah, so, I think so. Our children teach us, I mean, having their insight into their world and how their world is going on, that teaches us.
Yeah. And I think, what you're talking about too is being open to communities in different ways, being open to that connection in different forms. And we'll have to get that resource that you mentioned, and we'll send it in the follow-up with this podcast, because that's a great concept of really trying to be present and listen to
Yeah.
what do you need in this moment to feel most comfortable. And it can look like a lot of different things. As a dietitian, there's been a lot of conversations I've been asked about food, and food is an area of comfort. And a lot of people find comfort in food, and there's a conflict if someone's trying to improve their nutrition choices and eat foods that we classify typically as healthier, but we know those comfort foods are typically refined carbohydrates or higher in fat. Ice cream comes to mind. Bread, there's been a lot of bread baking, but I've had conversations on, if that is what you need right now, it's okay to give yourself permission to enjoy those foods rather than eat those foods and feel guilty about it. And then that perpetuates the cycle. Let's talk about, what that comfort looks like. And then what are other things that can provide you comfort so you're balancing?
Absolutely. And I think, see, this is the balance. You actually nailed it. So one can't, overextend and sort of take the other extreme of Huga and say, oh, that is my Huga, I'm going to overeat, because you have to understand the consequences.
Hmm.
There's also balance. It's
Hmm.
about how you're balancing your life right now. It
Hmm.
could be about rewarding, and it could be having cheat days here and there, but it's also important about being centered.
Hmm.
So, if you find other ways of coping and other ways of redefining your Huga, which could be, as I said, perhaps immersing yourself in a book that you love to read,
Hmm.
a geek like me, sorry, or
Yeah.
maybe somebody who is creative and can paint.
Hmm.
Or for some people, it might be having, just kind of like a conversation with their friends, and they have a scheduled date with their friends, they say, and you look forward to it. So you have to define something in your life, or in the time right now, to look forward to
Hmm.
something
Yeah.
that gives you fun. It could be that connection with somebody that you haven't spoken to for a long time.
Hmm.
It could be that great book that you always wanted to read and never had time. Things such as that, or cooking a healthy meal. I mean, we have you right here, Coach Stacy. So, and healthy meals can also taste very nice.
Hmm.
And
Absolutely, yeah, and having options around that, or trying to cook for the first time if you're home more, and embracing that process and learning from it, or perhaps you join a cooking community. I mean, there are resources. I know one of our guests, formerly Monica Jacobson, she was way back at the beginning of our webinar series. She's offering cooking classes on through I think they're online, they're virtual cooking classes, and she does once a month, she does them with kids. And so you can bring your kids, and then there's this large group, and she's leading those things. So that's another thing, looking for those resources where you can find that community, learn a new skill, learn something you enjoy, and something to maybe pass the time. So
yes, and what, I mean, maybe some kitchen disasters,
Mhm.
I mean, I've even tried to get my son because his Huga is eating cookies. So I said, okay, well, let's try to make some, right? That also gives him a little insight as to, how much sugar goes in things and,
Mhm.
how you might want to be balanced. But it's hard to teach a 5-year-old all that.
Yeah, that's a lot. But good for you for starting him young, right?
Yeah, I mean, I said, well, you know what? Let's kind of like do something because I'm bored. I'm bored. I said, okay, well, then, and then we made a little mini series. He was Chef Sean.
That's great.
It was very cute. He said at the end, subscribe to my channel. Too much YouTube, too much,
Yeah. He pays attention.
too much. These kids, I have to tell you, their brains are getting wired and, in a way that I don't even know. I think there'll be studies done later.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. In studies done on this whole situation, the whole pandemic, we're going to learn a lot. Right now, we're in the midst of it, and really finding ways to connect with your family, connect with other communities is really a theme here that I'm hearing around that. What when we think about COVID-19, I'm going to bring the menopause piece back in and mental health. So
Yeah.
we know that with menopause, decreasing estrogen, there is an increased predisposition for greater anxiety, greater depression, especially if a woman has experienced that previously in their life. And now we're adding in a pandemic to the mix. What are your recommendations about around community, maybe for individuals that are specifically have true diet or true anxiety and depression, like something that clinically that you would diagnose?
I mean, again, a great question. And this is also such a challenge right now in these times for people who are experiencing that to seek out mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally, we have the brick and mortar model clinics wherein you would call somebody, let's say you call your PCP, then they will connect you to the psychologist, they'll connect you to the psychiatrist, so on and so forth. But we don't have that luxury anymore
Mm-hmm.
of, having this kind of like traditional models being set up. So what I have seen in mental health is a dramatic change. I've seen people pivot towards telepsychiatry. I myself am kind of delving into it. Some things we had to do from our own hospital end, given the pandemic and given the situation where we needed to mitigate risk. So it has been a rapid learning curve, but I really see that there are so many resources now out there. But what is very important is to connect with your doctor, with your PCP.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the PCPs are also having and offering phone consultations or even communication via email. And if you are really experiencing that deep sense of struggle, and it's not just an adjustment, but you know that your functioning has kind of deteriorated to the level that you are going to that sad and the dark place,
Mm-hmm.
or any of those really suicidal thoughts or anything such as that, it is time to reach out to the emergency resources right away or crisis centers and talk to your doctor and they can connect you.
Okay.
And I think that from what I'm even hearing with the federal government has waived off a lot of these compliance issues. So there used to be a lot of regulatory issues for psychiatrists to be able to practice online. And now the federal government has recognized the nature of this crisis being such that they want to make it easier for doctors to practice and mitigate risk. So there are options out there, several options out there, several psychiatrists who are practicing privately, several
Mm-hmm.
who work for telepsych companies, and others who are opening their, private practices also, pivoting to that direction. So there is a way and there is help out there. The important thing is to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Do not suffer in silence.
Yeah.
Do
No,
not, no,
I
not
like that. Really stepping up again. Reach out to your community. Reach out to get help from the professionals that are there to support you, because we know that it is a concern, and they're professionals like yourself that's your job. You're there to support.
this is our job. And some of us, as I said, some I do volunteer for the physician colleagues, but at the same time, as I said, there are many professional services out there, telepsychiatry, as including, in my hospital we have outpatient services. But at the same time, I'm saying even online there are so many different services that one can actually make themselves available to that. But the most important thing is to communicate.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And we just had a question too around this that says, if I'm worried about a friend's mental health, what should I do? What should I look for? And again, that's a area where there's community and balance, but how do you recognize when perhaps just being a friend, your friend may need additional support, and how does that conversation go?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the fact that you actually ask that itself, the friend knows, right, that you're caring. I mean, I think a good friend is a friend who will definitely be very transparent with you in terms of their concern for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and even in that moment, perhaps your friend might present you or might feel angry that you're thinking about them in such a way, but deep inside, if they're suffering, I will tell you, they'll be so much, full of gratitude for the fact that you broached that question, that you asked them that question that they couldn't even bring it to ask themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as a friend, we just need to be constantly there, supporting them, checking on them. And, at times, if you're really concerned and your friend has said some things which are very concerning for you, then outreach maybe to her family,
Mm-hmm.
right? And of course, take her permission and say, hey, look, I'm really concerned about you. This
Right.
is not coming from a place of neglect. It's coming from a place of actually wanting to be there for you. You may not see it right now. You may,
Mm-hmm.
because you're angry, and I can understand that. But it is my job, if I'm a good friend, to want to kind of get you the resources.
Mm-hmm.
And then, don't bombard the friend with information. Gently but surely try and kind of like, keep that conversation going. Give them some resources,
Mm-hmm.
have them call somebody, right? And then kind of like ask them, what can I do for you right now? How
Okay.
can I help? How can I help goes a long way. That
Mm-hmm.
question, because sometimes the friend might say, I just need you to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And listening is what I do for a living.
Yeah.
And I think I learn so much
Mm-hmm.
from my patients by listening. And I feel like they actually get a lot out of the fact that I have listened.
Yeah.
Because that very simple act of listening goes a long way.
Yeah, and that's another piece to just giving that space for
Yeah.
people to talk. Oftentimes, if someone is struggling, the struggle is up here, and having the ability to let that come out, even if the friend doesn't say anything back, there's power in talking through that. So allowing someone to do that can be one of the best things, or that first step of providing the most help that they need, and that another sense of community,
Yes,
being heard.
absolutely. And I think that, it is, but it is a delicate issue. I completely agree, because you're not wanting to, you're destroy the friendship in a way that the friend feels you're being intrusive.
Mm-hmm.
Actually coming from a place of concern and care. And
Yeah.
I think sometimes the conversation or the icebreakers like, I don't know how you're dealing with all of this, but this pandemic is really making me feel so and so and so and so.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of normalizing that experience. That's
Yes.
how you help your friend open up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a great point of just saying, this is what I'm experiencing. How about you? What's going on for you, to see if there's a shared experience there.
And that's what makes other people connect and communicate, because otherwise, as I said, it's very easy to go from that period of concern to period of judging.
Yep.
There should
Yes.
be no judgment right now. People are doing whatever they can,
Mm-hmm.
whatever they can. And just try to help as much as you can.
Yes, that reminds me of something you mentioned earlier, coming back to the judgment, and you mentioned labels. Can you say a little bit more about what you're seeing around labels and judgment?
Right. I mean, that's a very good point. And, as a psychiatrist, I feel my approach towards psychiatry, it's yes, we do have a diagnostic and a manual called DSM, and we can, we know scientifically we need to know to understand how we can help medicate or create a treatment plan for the patient. But what's important? It's the person who's important,
Mm-hmm.
not the label that you're depressed. That's important. I think that your depression is not the only thing that I want to know. I want to know, what is it, the unique thing that makes you whole as a person,
Mm-hmm.
and which parts of you are suffering, and where can we kind of provide that nourishment for you? Where can we help you get back to that level of who you were, or what you're seeking for? So that's so important. And in no ways I'm diminishing or saying that, oh, we cannot, we have to diagnose, or we cannot diagnose. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, let's not judge and let's not label.
Mm.
Hey, you're a depressed person, what do you know? See, that itself is a label. right?
Yes.
Or hey, you suffered from depression, remember the time, blah 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 blah, and you were, you know how the other person feels, they feel incredibly demoralized.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. The removing those labels and looking at the individual.
Look at the individual, look at the symptoms. So for me, so from a scientific point of view, I like to look at symptoms.
Hmm.
How is this depression manifesting in you?
Hmm.
Let's try to attack those symptoms to make your life better. Are you sleeping okay? You know, I mean, you'll find psychiatrists asking these questions quite a bit, but it's important. You know,
Yeah.
sleep is so important.
Hmm.
So those kind of things, what can I do to enhance your quality of life
Yes.
while not
Yeah.
in that underlying illness? Yes, right? And that's how I'm going to look at it.
No, coming back to that individual, that's the approach too I use with the clients I work with. It's really how, okay, what symptoms are you experiencing specifically related to menopause? How can we manage those so that you can, how can I give you strategies so that you can manage them and then be able to have that enhanced quality of life so you can feel better day to day?
Right. And that's very important. And then, you know, sometimes that might not work. And then you have to pivot and say, okay, let's try this approach.
Yes,
So
exactly.
giving optimism and hope is so important because then
Yeah.
we try some new things and then we get disillusioned and we don't want to continue. We don't want to see our doctors anymore. We don't want to go for therapy anymore because we feel disillusioned and defeated.
Hmm.
So very important to sort of communicate with your therapist or, you know, whoever your loved one is or coach is. That this approach is not working for me.
Hmm.
Let me try something else.
Yeah, and again, it comes back to everyone's an individual, and what works for one person is might not work for another person, or in the circumstance, what works one week might not work the next week, and we have a toolbox. We got to pull out the next strategy for that.
I mean, you said something so important because week to week, we are getting all these informations from media, from our friends, from the resources, from our own experiences. And it's such a sort of an undulating course. Oh, we're
Hmm.
opening, we're not opening. Oh my God, this happened. Oh my God, that happened. We have to pivot and nimble every single time and then adjust ourselves to that situation also. That's taking a lot of stress on each one of us.
Yeah, yeah, no, that back and forth. It's almost whiplash. Sometimes I feel like things have just changed so quickly, and you don't know exactly what happened in between.
I mean, you wake up thinking, okay, so this is what happened today, and this is the direction we are going. And the next day you wake up, okay, what just happened again?
Yes, yes, you need a recall of things. Yeah, excellent. Well, before we wrap up here, Swapna, I'm just going to put another question out or just another call out for questions or comments if they come in. I do see we got a comment. I think it was around when we were talking about going through menopause during a pandemic. And this person said, yay, I get a trophy. Absolutely. We're going to have to do some Gennev branded trophies or t-shirts or something
Great idea.
because there's something to this. I mean, it's a whole other layer, and nothing could have prepared you ahead of time for this, and so I think it definitely deserves some kudos for those women that are in that position.
100%. I mean, I think, yes, a big trophy, a
Yes.
acknowledgement, a big shout out because,
Yeah.
wow, I mean, think about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. No, it's a challenge, and things shift day to day. Um, hormonally and then also in the news and with the pandemic, so it's a lot of moving parts to manage at this point, but the women I'm working with are doing great, and that's what we talk about on each call is just how can we handle right now today, and what are tools you can have in your toolkit so that you can, when things come up, you're prepared to handle them, and really, again, coming back to that quality of life.
Right. And, you know, having the sense of humor, sense of optimism,
Hmm.
the sense of knowing that, you know, everything has an end. This will
Yeah,
end at some point.
yeah,
That will
exactly.
feel like that. I know that.
Yeah.
That's too. But remember, things ended, right? You know, you grew
Yeah.
up, you know, and you kind of like had you finished college and then you went to med school, you went to your other, you know, higher educations and you may got married and, you know, things change. One
Hmm.
thing that is my father, he's a philosopher, I feel like he always says there's only one permanent thing in life. That's change.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I'll have to put that.
All you
Yeah.
do, pivot, 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 adapt to the change, go ahead, and that's what we can do. And resilience.
Hmm.
Resilience is a very important thing for the community. You know, before we wrap up, I just want to actually briefly talk about resilience because it's the most important thing we can enhance in the community.
Hmm.
Because right now, for all of us to survive this, not only we have to enhance our resilience, we have to give this resilience to our community. And the
Yeah.
shared resilience is what is going to get us right through this.
Yeah, that's a great point. And how do you see, do you have any suggestions too, if you're in a community and you see the need for resilience, how does someone initiate that resilience? What does that look like? I don't know if there's strategies around resilience. I'll let you take this one.
Actually, resilience has been studied quite a bit in psychiatry. And, I used to work at Mount Sinai, and the dean there has written a book about resilience. But, let's like not even go into all these depths of research of what it is. Resilience literally is how you cope with a
Mm,
situation, correct? I mean, the cost of sounding cliched, they say it's your response to a situation, right? That kind of like, would define the present moment. That's resilience.
yeah.
So, historically, we have seen people go through so many things through wars, through breakup of families, through just like devastation. And yet you see the human spirit resilient and they rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
And, you see a few years down the road, something else happens, and then the human spirit recovers and it rebuilds and is resilient. And I think the sense of resilience is there amongst all of us to some degree.
Yeah.
And again, from the research point of view, yeah, of course, some people may have it much more than others. They're genetically built in such a way and all of that. But I say that those who have it, share your tactics and your tips and what kind of kept you going through that
Yeah.
time.
A great thing to do to bring to a community that sense of resilience or leading by example
Right.
of, one foot in front of the other. We're all in this together. And that resilience can then build if it's shared a little bit more.
Right, a breath at a time, one step at a time, that
Yeah.
you can do. I used to, so funny story about residency, oh my God, I remember a call once where I didn't know whether I should answer the nature's call or I should eat. Like, oh, how many patients should I see? It was one of those calls, and I'm sure all doctors at some point experience that, but it was ridiculous. And then I realized, I'm one human being. I can only see one patient at a time. That's it.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
need to first take care of myself. I need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
If you like push some sugar in me, then I'll go.
Yeah.
Nothing's gonna happen. The mountain is not gonna fall.
Hmm.
I might be spending one more hour, because those times we used to do like overnight calls,
Hmm.
one more hour in the morning chatting. That's okay.
Yes. Because
That's resilience.
yeah, exactly. Oh, no, that's such a good point too. And I think with communities, we can hold each other accountable, and especially women communities. I've been in that position too, where all of a sudden I catch myself thinking, whether I'm doing work or distracted, and I'm like, I have to go to the bathroom. This is a natural thing. My body is telling me I need to go to the bathroom. Why am I putting this off? So it can be easy to do. And having that reminder of we need to eat, we
Yeah,
need to sleep,
yeah,
we need to go to the bathroom. Those are things that we need to live. And if we're listening to those needs, then we're going to be able to show up in other situations that much better.
absolutely. And I think that that's the key of self nurture and self compassion.
Hmm.
You're going to show up for those situations so much more stronger, resilient, and
Hmm.
capable of helping the other person. So that is important to take care of yourselves.
Excellent. Well, any other thoughts that you have right now, or resources that you've thought of that our listeners might be able to look into, or things just closing this topic around community resiliency and in unprecedented times?
I mean, there are several resources on our American Psychiatric Association website, as well as on other resources. And I think I have given Shannon a compilation of a lot
Great.
of resources. Even on the CDC website, there are
Mhm.
a number of resources what you can do. So just go through them and see, what kind of makes sense to you. One of the things that you and I have always spoken about, Stacey, is having a diary
Mhm.
and kind of jotting down your thoughts. I think that feels pretty cathartic sometimes to just see. And then even week to week, your thoughts are changing as the pandemic and the situation is changing. And a week ago, you thought you would not be able to do that, but you did it. That's resilience.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's and the charting piece too can be it can seem like one more thing to do, but I think there's pattern tracking that we can see and things that you start to notice when you look at this and how you're feeling, and being able to track that is helpful. And then also it's another source, especially maybe you're not comfortable talking to someone else, but if you're writing, it's another way to get the thoughts out here and get them and put them away, and have them processed a little bit more.
And then you can sort of jot down your problems, right? Like which is the one that needs to be solved immediately versus the things that don't really need to be solved immediately. What
Yeah,
happens to us is we look at a problem list of 10 and we are overwhelmed. That's it. We can't do anything. Why don't we
yeah,
pick one that really needs addressing?
excellent.
Slowly go over that and see, and then take the next step, and then take the next step. And that's the only way. I feel that that's something that works for me, because
Mhm.
as everybody else, I get overwhelmed. As everybody else, I get anxious, and oh my God, I haven't done this, I haven't done that. I have to take a step back and say, well, let's see,
Yeah,
what do you need to do today, and what's like really of a matter of dire emergency.
yeah,
Then
no,
step back and try to approach it. You know and forgive yourselves. We all make mistakes. We are making mistakes. We are humans, and especially in these times. So you're not that perfect mother or perfect sister or daughter or wife or what have you. It's all okay.
yes, yeah, exactly. Give yourself some grace and kindness.
That's fine. If the house is messy, that's fine. Your hair is showing some gray roots. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all. It's all pales in comparison to what we are going through right now.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Swapna. I really appreciate you taking this time to do this and sharing your insight, and also for your work as a healthcare worker on the front lines. I don't think that should go unrecognized, for the work that you're doing to support healthcare providers, and obviously support those in need. So thank you for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I definitely am lucky that I work with a very great team of, colleagues, and I definitely want to give them a shout out too, for what they've been doing and going through. And plus, I feel very privileged and honored that I can support the front line healthcare workers through the physician support line, because that's something that is, as you said, altruistically, it's gratifying to me
Mhm.
that I can, in my little way, kind of like listen to their stories. That's all I do. I can only listen to their stories.
Yeah.
That's powerful for them.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And thank you to our participants and our viewers today. It was great to have you. And just to give you an idea of what's coming down the line, so our next webinar, so next week, we'll be talking to Lori Mintz, and she is a professional looking at, the topic will be sexual health during COVID-19. So another topic relative to women and men. So anyone can chime in or tune in for that. So if you know someone that might be interested in that topic, please share this resource and the link with them so they can sign up for the free webinar. And then also just a reminder that our health fix is also available. You can sign up through our website, and if you're looking for some of what Swapna and I talked about today, where I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist or therapist, however, as a dietitian, I am able to help support you in strategies that might be able to help manage stress. So where it can work in conjunction with stress management and putting those tools in place, or just kind of coming to see what do you need to do right now? How can you help to develop a structure, a routine, or perhaps looking for communities. If you need help on finding that community, I may be able to provide suggestions, or by joining our Gennev community, you might find what you're looking for. So please take a look at that. And also on our website, we have a lot of resources in our Learn section. So that's another thing for you to look into. So thank you, Swapna. I appreciate your time again, and have a great rest of your day. And I'm sure we'll be in touch soon.
Absolutely. And stay safe, everybody. Thank you again
Yes.
for having me.
Take care.
Bye bye.